In this video, we are going to build a simple COVID-19 dashboard. COVID-19 was a worldwide pandemic that hit the world a couple of years back. This is going to be fun. Let's get started. Our app is going to be a simple end-to-end application using React.js for frontend. The front end will allow the users to select any country. Depending upon the selection, an HTTP request will be sent to the backend nodejs API. The nodejs API will call the COVID-19 data APIs exposed by Rapid API to fetch the COVID-19 data. The data fetched then will be rendered on the screen as charts. To build this dashboard, knowing the items below can be helpful, although I will be explaining the concepts as we go along. Good to know React.js and Node.js. Some experience with programming, knowledge of APIs and front-end and back-end applications. As for the tech stack, for the front-end we are going to use React.js. For the back-end we are going to use Node.js. We are going to deploy our application on Vercel. Vercel provides free hosting, so it's a good choice for our use case. As we are not going to save any data, database is not required in our application. Now I want my application to be styled so that it becomes visually appealing. For this, I'm going to use the MetroUI CSS. I like this UI as it's more intuitive, but you can also use Material CSS or Bootstrap CSS. In our application, we need to have charts rendered. For the charts, I'm going to use the d3.js. To make an external API calls from React.js app, we are going to use Axios library. We are also going to need a text editor. I'm going to use Visual Studio Code to write and edit the code. Visual Studio Code is a free and popular text editor that comes with a rich support and extensions. It's also available for all the popular operating systems. You will find the links in the description. Dashboard requires data, so we need to identify how to get the data for COVID-19. Fortunately, there is an API offered by RapidAPI to provide us the data. The API is free to use. You can find the link in the description. We can get the data using this API by calling their REST endpoints. React.js is all about components. A component is basically a piece of UI that's rendered by React.js. If you have a functionality like displaying a chart, you can reuse it across multiple areas of the application without having to write the redundant code. Any React.js application component consists of UI, associated business logic, and any CSS that's required by the UI. If you look at our application, there are three components of the application on UI: main component, list component, and charts component. The main component acts as a parent component and hosts list and chart components. The user selects the country from the list component. Once the country is selected, its data is fetched and rendered in the chart component. Now you must be wondering if this is the only way to arrange the components. The answer is no. It entirely depends upon how you look at your web application and how you wish to arrange it. For the sake of this video, this arrangement is sufficient for us. Now first run the command in the terminal. npx create React app COVID dashboard. This will initialize the React.js application. Next, we need to install Chart.js and Axios in your application. You will need to run the commands shown on the screen to install these: npm install Axios, npm install Chart.js. You can verify that the dependencies have been installed by looking at package.json. It should look like as shown on the screen. Your versions might be different from those shown on screen, but for the time being, that's fine. Don't worry about it. We are ready to move to the next step. Now that we have installed the dependencies, time to add some code. Locate the index.js file. It should be on the location shown on the screen. Go ahead and update the index.js code with the code shown on the screen. Here we are asking the React DOM to render the app component on the screen. We will update the app component in the next step. The React strict mode helps in the debugging of the application. For now, just ignore it and move on. Now let's take a look at the components. First, app component. When you initialize any React.js application, the default component that is given to us is called app component. App component is the root component of the application that contains one or more components. We need to update the code of the app component to add our COVID-19 dashboard code. Open the app.js file and update its code with the code shown on the screen. The point to note here is that the return function returns the HTML in the form of JSX. This is the HTML that is rendered on the screen. On line 3, we are importing the app.css file. I am not going into details about the CSS here. You can review the code in my GitHub repository for more. In the next step, we will make our components: charts component, a list component, and main component. Locate the components folder in your directory structure of the application. If it's not there, create a new folder, components. Inside this folder, create a new file called main component.js. Inside this file, add the code shown on the screen. There's quite a lot happening, so let me break it down for you. 1. First, we import React and Axios. 2. Next, we need to have two event handlers: on country selected and get selected country. 3. We also initialize a state variable. State variable is going to hold the country selected. 4. If you look at the return function of this component, you will see list component and charts component. So essentially our main component is wrapping list component and charts component. This helps with the reusability of the components. 5. Our main component hosts both list component and charts component. The list component will call the external service and get the country's data from it. Once the data has been fetched, it's displayed on the screen so that the user can select any country. Once the user selects any country, the selected country needs to be passed to the charts component. This component will fetch the COVID-19 data for the country passed to it. Here I want to talk about the state variable. The state variable is a special variable in the React.js. When the value of this variable is changed or updated, it forces React to update the UI on the screen by calling the return function with the updated value of state. But to update the UI on the screen, it's necessary to use the setState method to update the value of the state. In React.js, we cannot directly pass the values between sibling components. List and charts, both components are siblings. Hence, we pass the data to the parent, and then the parent passes the data to the child component. This is a bit tricky, but something we need to remember. We are passing the functions as parameters. This is because in React.js, the data can be passed from parent to child but not vice versa. To pass data from child to parent, we must pass the callback function. Now we want to create our list component. The purpose of the list component is just to display the countries fetched from external service and display on the FE. Create a new file called listcomponent.js. Add the code shown on the screen. The code is simple. First, we import the React and Axios. Next, we initialize the component. The props are the arguments that were passed when this component was rendered on the screen. Recall that it was added in the main component. In this component, we initialized a new state variable called countries. This variable is going to hold the countries fetched from the external service. Now let's look at the fetch list items. This method calls the external service and then holds the countries. Once we have the list of countries, we add all at the first index. We also select this all by default and then call the function this props on country selected. This will call the external service with the argument passed. Looking at the code, you can see that the first element that is passed in our case is all that we just inserted. This will allow us to fetch the data for all the countries. We know that onCountrySelected was passed from main component or parent component to list component or child component. This is how data is transferred from child to parent in React.js. Now come back to the list component. We want to call the external service as soon as the app loads. For this, we use the event handler called componentDidMount. This event handler is called by React.js as soon as the component is rendered on the UI. So we will fetch the countries from external service as soon as the component is displayed on the screen. Now we look at the UI rendering. First, we check if our state variable countries has been initialized or not. If the countries have not been fetched, we don't display anything on the screen. Here we can also show the progress bar or anything if we need, if the countries have been fetched or not. We check this by using the condition, this.state.countries equals none than this .state countries.length 0. Here we display the countries on the UI using the select element of the HTML. In React.js, when we display the items of list in loop, it's necessary that we pass the key as well. A key is an item that uniquely identifies the items of the list. Finally, we check if the countries is null or not. If you look at the fetch list items method, you will see that upon error, we set the countries to null. So we now check that if the countries are null, there was some issue in calling the external service. In this case, we just display a simple user-friendly error message. First, we need to get the data. From our main component, we receive the country that was selected in the list component. Now let's look at the UI. We are going to display the charts on the UI. We are going to display 3 charts, a bar chart comparing cases, deaths, and tests, a pie chart breaking down case distributions, and line chart showing historical trends. Drawing charts is a bit complicated, so if you find this part difficult, then relax. By the end, you will be able to fully understand it. First, we initialize the charts component. We set the current state of the component to the country selected. Next, we initialize an object to hold the data for the COVID-19 API for the country. We are looking at number of deaths, country last updated date, number of cases, and no of tests. To draw the charts, we build 3 methods: create line chart, create statistics bar chart, create statistics pie chart. Then we also initialize the chart colors so that we can use them in all the charts. It fetches live and historical data from an API via Axios and presents it through 3 interactive charts: a bar chart, a pie chart, and a line chart. The bar chart displays key metrics like new and total cases, deaths, tests, active cases, critical cases, and recoveries, while the pie chart breaks down cases into categories such as recovered, active, critical, new, and total. The line chart tracks trends over time, showing new cases, and total deaths. The component dynamically updates whenever the selected country changes. ensuring the latest data is displayed. To maintain clean and efficient rendering, the component destroys old chart instances before creating new ones whenever data is refreshed. It also processes the raw data, removing plus signs from numbers and formatting dates for the line chart. The UI is structured in two rows. The first row contains the bar and pie charts side by side, while the second row features a full-width line chart for trend analysis. The charts are responsive and use a predefined color scheme for consistency. Wraps up our code for the front-end application. In the next part, we will be building the external service to fetch the data for COVID-19 dashboard. You can find the complete code at my GitHub repository. All the links are in the description. I have also added the link to deployed application and Rapid API COVID-19 URL in the description. Thanks for watching this video. If you like this content and you want to watch more such stuff, consider subscribing. If you want me to make a video on any application idea, feel free to ask in the comments. If you are considering your career in software engineering, I have made a detailed video that will help you to understand all about it.